So today we are going to be doing a color where we're taking someone from a blonde, possibly a summer blonde, to more of a fall lived-in color. We call this color Going Bronde. So how we go at this look is we make sure that we are keeping them blonde around the face and around the hairline area. And we are going to be breaking up the blonde by doing slices and also our surface painting technique. We want to keep some blonde bringing up to the top of the head and also painting those ends. So it's a good mixture of the highs and the lows with also creating a very soft outgrowth. So excited to share this look with you guys. Okay, so we're gonna start out with the pieces around the hairline. I'm gonna do 3 foils back to back right here, just so we have a strong money piece. And then we will move on to our next part, which will be our low lighting. Okay, so I wanna go in and just take a small section around the hairline first, making sure you're always keeping a clean sectioning. And it's important not to try and take too much hair right here. If you know that they have baby hairs, what I always like to do is just take those baby hairs out of the way, because those can end up being bleeders and splotches. So just keep those out of the way, and now you have a clean line to start weaving. So it's gonna be a true baby light foil here. And there we go, that's our first piece. Starting a little bit below the hairline. And then that last little bit, bring up the lightener. Okay, so we're gonna repeat that 3 times and then we'll move on to the top. Okay, so how we like to approach the front hairline is that we go even with the person's natural recession and natural hairline. So I will start right here, taking small sections. Again, if you see any extra baby hairs, just pull those down. They don't need to be in there. We don't need any extra splotches. So we'll take a fine weave. Make sure you're going really tight up to the head, and then bringing those pieces down. So we'll do 3 on that side of the hairline, and we're also gonna then do 3 on this side of the hairline. We'll just repeat what we did on this side, and we're just continuing that pattern around the whole hairline. You to our surface painting technique. We like to do this in a triangle section right above where we did our hairline foils. So it's important to make sure that this is at a very tight 45-degree angle, and make sure you are holding it, pinching your fingers flat. You're gonna take your low light color and you're just gonna barely have some on the brush, and you're gonna do a very gentle tap, and this is to diffuse any lines and create a very seamless low light look. There will be no stripes. It's gonna look like it's her natural color. And so you just wanna barely tap, tap, tap. And I like to start kind of in the middle and make sure you're holding your brush at a very light tilt as you work your way up. And what's nice about this is it's a very visual way of coloring, so you can see exactly where her previous color is, so it's a very easy way to blend those out. So even up here, her hair's already dark, so we don't need to overly saturate right there. I'm gonna dip a little bit more onto my brush, just like that. And again, starting on this side, making sure you're continuing to hold it very flat and tight. We're gonna work our way up the left side of the head. Now, once we get to the ends, we don't want to fully saturate because we still do want those light pops on the end. So I'm just going to barely, once I get towards the end, just feather that through.
Ready? Okay, now that we have our surface painting, we're going to go in with panels of our lowlights, and then the panels will act more of your darker, more contrast lowlight in there to give the hair a little bit more depth, more dimension throughout the hair.
Okay, now that we have our 2 panels of the low light, we are gonna go in and do another surface painting as our mid-light color. And you're going in very light, starting in the middle and working your way up. Anywhere where you see the previous highlights, that's where you want to focus your color. And if you see a line as well, this is a perfect technique to use to blur out any previous color lines and outgrowth. And with these surface painting, you don't always want to end at the same point. So the one underneath, we ended a little bit lower. This one, we are going to leave a little bit more of those ends out, and that just creates more of a blend. It's all about a very blended, natural outgrowth. So here, we're just going to lightly feather those last little bit.
Already now moving on to our side sections, we are gonna go ahead and do a panel of a highlight just over the ear. It's really nice to go ahead and have that, especially if your guest likes to curl her hair, so then when she curls it, those highlights will pop through underneath. So we always like to do one panel of highlights right on top of the ear. Another thing to keep in mind, always keep your sections when you are doing the panels, the slices, keep the sections nice and thin.
So I want to explain a little bit about how we approach the sides here. We just did our panel of a highlight. This is going to be a surface paint. Then we'll finish off with another panel of a low light, our surface paint, and then we're going to have those baby lights peek through the top and be our veil over all of our dimension that we just created under here. So I will show you again how we do our surface paint through the sides. I do like to approach this a little bit differently because typically there's maybe shorter pieces. You might not want to see all that dimension all the way up to the root. So how we're going to do it is we're going to put we're going to saturate darker over here and keep more of that lightness around the face. So it's going to be more of an angled approach. So I'll show you how we do it. So again, I like to start just lightly on the sides. And all this is imitating what our hair would naturally do if we had childlike highlights. What does it naturally do on its own? You see that depth right above the ear, and most people, they get those natural highlights around the face, especially if you live somewhere warm or you spend a lot of time outside. We're trying to just imitate that look. So this is where we typically see the dark, and then here's where our angle is, just working lightly up to the top.
We have our section of the surface paint. The next section we're going to be doing is a panel of our low light. Keep in mind as we go through the top of the head, your sections have to get paper thin just so they blend a little bit better, and that will help with the regrowth.
Okay, now that we're getting closer to the top of the head, we're gonna be changing up how we're doing this a little bit. We're gonna be alternating a baby light, making sure it's a very fine section, and we're gonna be introducing a weaved low light, making sure the closer you get to the heart line, you wanna make those weaves smaller and more blended, and your sections are gonna be closer together. All of this creates a very seamless blended look, and you'll notice the difference on your clients.
Again, just keep in mind, as you're moving up the head, keeping your sections as thin as possible. Make sure you have enough tension. What I find a lot of people is they don't have enough tension when they're feathering the TZ lights. You always want to make sure that you have enough tension, enough product, otherwise you will receive spots.
Okay, so we always like to finish the top with a surface paint, especially when you're going darker. It's gonna create a veil. We'll have enough of those lighter pieces popping out through the bottom. So this will diffuse any previous grow out and just create that depth that looks so beautiful when it's curled or just straight. It's gonna look like you were naturally born with it. And we like to approach this one a little bit different because we're gonna be putting our surface paint up through the top, making sure right here is very important to diffuse that grow out line. And now what makes this one a little bit different is that we are gonna balayage the ends, and it just marries those two looks together. So again, starting down here, making sure you're saturating that. And then here's where you're gonna blur those two together. What we want to really teach you guys is how to visually look at someone's head and see where the pieces need to be placed. It's easy to follow a formula where you just follow the same exact foil pattern every time, but what we found it to be different at our salon is where we visually pick out where we want those highlights. So it's important, especially if you're going darker, you don't want to highlight all the way up to where the part line is, because that will then look like they're blonde. So what we like to do is take that section right where the part is and leave this out. That's gonna be our veil that covers all of the other lowlights and the highlights, and it creates that depth, especially when you finish off with a color melt, it even richens that even more. So leave this out, that's our little trick that we like to do. And we will finish off by throwing in a couple more of our baby lights and our weaved low lights. This painting on the top, this one is very important to stay very, very light touch. And it's gonna be mostly focused right where the regrowth is. And we're not gonna bring this all the way down, just enough to diffuse the lines and create that veil.
Again, we always like to tip off, especially around the hairline, just to give it that extra pop. Also, what it does, it opens up that cuticle for those ends, so that when we do the gloss, she'll see a little bit more of that dimension through those ends.
Okay, so now we're gonna start on the color melt. How we like to section is we always like to leave a piece around the face, leaving between a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of where we did our highlights, and combing all of these pieces forward, and we drag it then just to the beginning, the front part of the ear. And then we always like to keep it nice and neat by sectioning from the top part of the head to right behind the ear, and this is gonna be our section we'll be working up. Okay, as we work up the sides of the head, we like to just gently tap and then take a small section. Make sure you can either comb the hair down or pull the hair down so there's no loops. And then you're gonna tap that top part of the head. And again, just working your way up and tapping. And then always making sure you have enough product on your brush. Working your way up and just gently diffusing any previous lines and adding that depth.
Once we have the shadow base set, we always like to use a wet brush, and we just slightly comb it through just to blur out any line.
Now we're gonna start applying the gloss, and how we like to start is we like to apply in the mids, and then we work our way up to finally blurring then through our roots. And then again, you'll wanna resaturate your brush and then work your way down.
The last 5 minutes, you want to go ahead and pull the gloss through the front hairline and the front sections.